Welcome back to Certified Examiner Training, refresher course here. We're up on the automatic disqualification section. There are 5 types of automatic disqualification. Remember, if any of the following occur, the applicant is disqualified, the drive test has ended at that point. So first up, if there's an accident, we're just going to cover them briefly. We'll come back and do more specifics with them. Dangerous action, a violation of law. See, these are all along the bottom of your score sheet. Failure to perform. So if any of those occur, check the appropriate box, check the no box, and you have to list the reason. And the other one I didn't mention, of course, the deductions, we'll get that in a second. Once one of these 4 occur, immediately end the drive test and stop all scoring. Okay? Take them back to the office or school by the most direct route. Don't finish the route. Don't do any more maneuvers. Right? Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go back to the school. Do not tell the applicant that the test is ended before returning to the office and the car is turned off and your seatbelt's off. Now the 5th type is deduction, so accumulation of errors. So even when they've lost too many points to pass and you're like, I'm running out of ink, I've just about filled this paper with ink, the test keeps going. After returning to the office, turn the car, circle the sub-scores, add the total, give the results by telling them these 2 words, you disqualified, if they lost too many points. Now it's clumsy, and you really want to say, oh, you didn't pass, sorry, or you did not qualify, which is the most common when we say, but you're required to, according to the examiner manual, say, you disqualified. Enter the score, check the X or the no, and then put in the score there, check that deductions box. All right, so each one of these, let's go over accident first. The following is considered an accident. Anytime there's contact with a pedestrian. Any contact with a pedestrian. Contact with a fixed object, such as a mailbox. Contact with another vehicle. So this includes scratches, dents, indentations, scuff marks, or if the car alarm goes off due to contact, that's considered an accident. Now, for slight bumper contact while parking that leaves no mark is not. You'll see this on the parallel parking section when we get to that video. Also, hitting parallel parking stanchions, those orange cones, or stanchions are not considered an accident. So you can run over them and crush them. It's not considered an accident. Next up is dangerous action. Dangerous driving situations that are not specific violations of the law. So I want you to, we put these words in bold for a reason. So if a collision was prevented by the expert driving on the part of another. So for example, someone swerved to avoid a collision or required hard braking. Sometimes your applicant may not yield the right of way, causing them to hit, another person to slow down to avoid them or change lanes. But really, you need to decide that it was a swerve, expert driving required, or maybe required hard braking before you consider it a dangerous action. Anytime a pedestrian has to dodge, jump out of the way, and things that are specifically listed driver errors requiring a score. For example, things like 2 wheels on the curb. Anytime you have to take physical or verbal control of the vehicle to prevent a collision. So if you've got to tell them to stop the car, stop. That ends the test. That's a dangerous action. You have to say something, or if you have to grab the wheel or step on the brake or pull the emergency brake or put it in neutral, whatever you did, that's considered a dangerous action. And the test ends. Some examples of verbal control. So if an applicant backs out of a parking stall with fogged windows that it's obscured vision, it's bad enough to be dangerous, you're going to have to tell them to stop. Okay, we can't see. You're going to turn on the defroster. While driving, if you have to instruct an applicant to turn on their windshield wipers when it's raining or snowing, and it's gotten so bad that you can't see out the windshield, it's really obstructed the vision. Okay. In situations involving other traffic, there should be, again, a real and immediate threat of collision that can be described. You have to say what it is on the score sheet. You have to put the reason. Right? So once that's taken place, which again, you have to describe to the applicant, and if driving back would be unsafe, you can ask to drive back and say, hey, I'm going to drive back from here. No worries. Try to keep it relaxed. Try to keep it cool. I've only had to do this once. 7,000 drive tests. It's not very common. Remember, scoring stops once a dangerous action occurs. Now you have to write it down on the score sheet what that reason was. So you have to say what it was. So examiner braked You also have to say kind of why, failure to yield to cross traffic, some FTY for failure to yield, something like that. And also where. So something like South 19th Avenue, or South 19th Street and 5th Place. Something like that. You'll have to say what you did, or briefly what happened, and where it happened. That's required. And when the auditors come by, they're going to look for that. Now, now here's the other thing about dangerous. Sometimes people do things that are dangerous, but they didn't fit within those parameters we define. It's not a disqualification. Violations also very similar. People may commit violations of the law, but they are limited to these following situations for an automatic disqualification. So anytime an applicant exceeds the speed limit by 6 miles per hour, so for example 31 miles per hour in a 25 mile per hour zone like the example shown here, that's an automatic disqualification. When that happens, tell them their speed. You're driving 31 miles per hour, and you can tell them to slow down a little bit. After it occurs, say, you're driving 31 miles per hour, you got to go a little bit slower. And if you deliver it right, they'll think, oh wow, the examiner's really nice, they're helping me out by telling me to go just a little bit slower when I'm supposed to go slower. Sure, that's okay. The test is ended at that point. Remember, 6 over, test over. 6 over, the test is over. That's what you need to remember. Failing to stop at a stop sign or a red light. Remember, they got to make a complete stop. Now, this is new as of the 2021. I say new, it's still 3 years old. New for the 2021 update to our examiner manual. Back in 2012 and 2014 updates, this didn't include this. We were kind of expecting the car to settle. Now, the 2021 update, do not score a violation for failing to settle the vehicle at a stop sign or a red light. If the passing scenery stopped, even for a brief moment, do not score as a violation. DOL has softened what a complete stop is for the drive test. Okay, don't get too excited. There was a reason they did it, because there were problems with people making them count to 5 before they proceeded from a stop sign or a red light or turning right on red. And so that wasn't not okay. And so, because that's not the law. And so that's the new standard. If the passing scenery stopped even for just a moment, do not score it as a violation. All right, so you have speeding, not stopping completely at a stop sign or red light. Next up, driving on the wrong side of the road. That means more than one tire width over a marked lane, right? So that's more than one tire width on the wrong side of the road, or having more than half the car over the opposing traffic side of an unmarked road with 2 directions of travel. So most neighborhood streets are like this. And you're going to know, if they're driving right down the middle of the road, there's a penalty for that under lane travel, RT, not keeping to the right. But if they're driving mostly on the other side of the road, that's a violation, driving on the wrong side of the road. Also, driving the wrong way on a one-way street. That's a pretty easy one, right? It's pretty bad, and you can guess that it would be an automatic disqualification. Another one, if a car drives straight ahead in a turn lane. So watch the red car here. They're in a turn lane, but they end up going straight, making a lane change. Well, I signaled and checked over my shoulder before I... No. You're driving straight ahead in a turn lane, violation. Test over. If you're turning from a straight ahead travel lane. Sometimes people come up to a 2-way center left turn lane and they won't enter it to make a left turn. That's a violation. So in other words, if there is a turn lane but you're not using it, that's a violation. Test over. Anytime an applicant is stopped by law enforcement and receives a warning or a citation. I've only heard of this happening once at our school over tens of thousands of driving tests. Somebody who was speeding, and as the examiner was telling them to slow down, you have to slow down, they were picked up by a motorcycle officer who pulled them over, tore up the temporary authorization to drive and gave the driver a ticket, and then the instructor had to drive back. If they get a warning or citation, that's it. Remember, don't score violation or dangerous action for not using their seatbelt. Tell them they have to put it on. Can't do the test, right? Now remember, scoring stops once a violation occurs. Okay? So just be chill, bring it up. Hey, there was a stop sign at that last turn. Wait until you've returned to the school before informing them they have disqualified. And then sometimes they'll ask, oh, did I fail? They go, well, I can't really explain how the points work. When we get back to the parking lot, I'll explain, how what the point loss is, something like that. You don't have to explain it. You just gotta kind of deflect it. Remember, disqualifications due to violations are limited to a very few situations only. Speeding 6 or more, failing to stop at a stop sign or traffic light, red traffic light, driving on the wrong side of the road, driving straight from a turn lane, turning from a straight ahead lane, and getting a ticket from law enforcement, warning or citation. That's it. Now, a lot of things that are on the drive test are violations of law, right? Cutting across the yellow line is a violation. Stopping over the stop line is a violation. But these are the only ones that are automatic disqualifications. Okay? That's it. Next up, the failure to perform. If an applicant is unwilling to comply after they're told it's required, you have to tell them, so you have to do it. It can be a cause for disqualification, so do your best, but it is required for the test. So if they refuse to try a maneuver, you're not able to assess anything, they state they cannot or will not perform the action. If they still refuse it after you've said, hey, you've got to try, it may be a cause for disqualification. And if they still refuse to try, the test is ended. No big deal. Just all right, re-enter traffic, and then just guide them back to the school on the most direct route. Here's another example. If during the test the applicant repeatedly fails to follow instructions or directions in the test, such that they cannot complete the direction in a reasonable period of time, preventing completion of the test. There's the key word here. If they repeatedly fail to follow instructions or directions. Okay. Again, so missing one turn is not a failure to perform. If it happens, just get back on the course and continue the test. Here's the other thing. Repeated deviation from the course is a failure to perform. There's something there. Hopefully it's not a communication issue, because remember, this is not a test of communication skills. It's just a test of driving skills. It's your job to say the directions early enough. Clarify it if they don't understand. Give them new instructions if they don't understand. You don't have to repeat the verbiage verbatim if they need additional instructions. Okay. You do for the brake reaction test, you can give new instructions and then repeat the verbatim verbiage. But if they're having trouble finding the turn, clarify it. When you say, at the next corner, turn left, and they look at you like, oh, I say, next to the fence. Next to the fence over here where the red car is parked. Something like that. If you have to point out a landmark, not a sign, and not a traffic light. So remember, you can assist in needing clarifications if they appear to be turning off the route. So this happens on one of our routes where I'll say at the next corner, turn left, and they just don't see it because it's a small street. I'll say here, and I'm pointing at it. Here, turn here. Oh, okay. Do it timely because you don't want them to miss the test. Again, the skills test is not a test of language understanding. If you're having a language barrier issue, try something else like paraphrasing your instructions using hand gestures. Draw pictures on a separate paper. It's not a big deal. We're not here to gauge, can you understand these instructions in English? We're here to say, can you drive when you understand kind of what the basics of what we're asking you to do. Turn left, turn right, parallel park, park on the hill, drive to the side of the road, change lanes. Okay. Failure to perform cannot be scored until the applicant has begun the test. Scoring failure to perform for leaving the route should be very rare. And I'll tell you, failure to perform as a disqualification should be extremely rare. I think I may have only done one, maybe two that I've ever done in 10 years. And again, 7,000 drive tests, so it's very rare. Now remember, scoring will stop once a failure to perform occurs. And of course, and the last reason for not qualifying is an accumulation of error, so the deductions one. So remember, even though they may have already lost all the points here, so at this point right here, they're riding at 78 points. This does not immediately end the test. Keep going, keep scoring, all the way to the end. Without another type of disqualification occurring, keep going. At the conclusion of the test, total it up. So in this case, once the test is over, engine's off, keys, turns off, your seatbelt's off, start circling the sub-scores, doing the math here. 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 16, plus 6 is 22, subtract from 100 is 78. Write the 78 at the bottom. Check the no, check the deductions. Double check your math, use a calculator if needed. Here's something you need to remember. This is the golden rule. If it's not on the score sheet, If it's not in the examiner's manual, do not score it. Do not score it. Let me give you an example of this. It used to be that if you blasted through a roundabout straight ahead, you didn't bother scanning it or slowing down at all, there was no penalty for that. Well, now there is. If you don't scan the roundabout before you enter it, then it is a failure to comply under the traffic control device. So it's something that changed in an update. Didn't used to be, so you couldn't score. You're like, oh, this is terrible. You shouldn't be allowed at all. Yeah. And it used to be, you could get as close as you want to a pedestrian in a crosswalk as long as you didn't hit them, they didn't jump out of the way. There's no penalty for that. Now there is. Now right-of-way has been added to the pedestrian penalties for the right-of-way section. I'll go over that in a later video. So the vision. In general, you're going to see vision all over the score sheet. So you're going to circle that when the applicant doesn't use best possible vision when they're changing lanes, anytime they're leaving traffic, anytime they're entering traffic. So let me go back here real quick. Anytime they're changing lanes, it's going to be here in this lane travel vision. Anytime you tell them to leave traffic, which is drive to the side of the road and stop, which you do 3 times on the test. So you're going to tell them to leave traffic. You're going to score it under vision if they don't use best possible vision, which is basically a blind spot check. Anytime they re-enter traffic from the side of the road, which is going to be in these 4 maneuvers here, you'll see vision under all those. Anytime they're driving backward in reverse, right, which could happen on all 4. Anytime they're passing somebody, which could happen on either lane travel or passing, kind of depends on the scenario. Anytime they're entering an intersection, it's like a stop sign, a traffic signal light, uncontrolled left or right turns. There's vision all over. Now remember, best possible vision can depend on the vehicle. So if you have somebody show up in one of these, and I've done a test on one of these, great guy, Sergey from Siberia. He bought this truck when he got here, and he drove his big yellow one. Took the test in the dark, and I remember he scored a 90. This is probably 8 years ago. He scored a 90. He was so proud of it, he wanted to take his picture with me. And I asked him how he did so well. I was like, you're crazy. You want to take this in a U-Haul, basically? And he said, oh, it's fine. I was a bus driver instructor in Siberia. I'm like, you're going to be fine. And he was great. Did great. Remember to use good judgment and be practical when you're scoring vision errors. Now, we're required to, as of the 2021 update, do give credit if an applicant appeared to use their peripheral vision. You don't have to have their chin touch their shoulder, right? As long as it looks like you're watching their eyes, so you'll see if it looks like they're kind of bending them over to use peripheral vision. Vision errors may be scored for not checking for traffic at all, checking for traffic too early, right? They look and then they look down, they futz around with the gear thing, and they're kind of like looking around, and then they get back in there, but they don't look again. Or they check for it too late, like, they pull back out into traffic and then they look over their shoulder. Well, that didn't help. That's too late. All right, scoring for signal. Remember, score for signal when a signal is required, but the signal is either not used at all, used too late, less than 100 feet before a turn or a lane change, or done in the wrong direction. That does happen, not very often. Now remember, if the signal is not disengaged, or is put on unnecessarily, that goes right up here in the upper right corner, mechanical operations section. And we'll get to that when we cover the videos for each individual section on the score sheet. Okay. Remember, you're expected to use good judgment if the car disengages the signal and the applicant correctly puts it back on. All right, we're going to jump into the maneuvers in the next video, starting off with the backing maneuver. See you then.